Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a question. When was the last time you looked around your home and realized how many things you've collected over the years? The furniture, the clothes, the gadgets, the boxes in the attic. You may have spent a lifetime gathering them, but here's the hard truth. Once you pass 60, nobody else cares about your stuff the way you do. And that's not a tragedy, it's a wake-up call. Because what truly matters isn't the things you leave behind, it's the life you've lived, the memories you've created, and the impact you've made. So today, let's talk about 5 key truths we need to embrace once we hit this stage of life. Think for a moment about the things you've held onto over the years, the furniture that's been in your living room for decades, the clothes hanging in your closet, the gadgets that once felt new and exciting but now sit in drawers collecting dust. At the time, each of those items probably felt important. You worked for them, saved for them, and maybe even sacrificed to have them. But here's the truth. In the long run, it's not the material things that hold real value, it's the memories you created around them. The sofa isn't what matters. What matters are the nights you spent on it, talking with your children, laughing with friends, or holding your partner's hand while watching a movie. The dishes in your kitchen may not mean much by themselves, but the family dinners, the holiday celebrations, the moments of togetherness they made possible, those are priceless. We often confuse possessions with meaning. We hold on to objects thinking they're the key to remembering, when in reality, it's the experience we had that leaves the true mark on our hearts. A grandparent's sweater isn't important because of the fabric. It's important because of the warmth it reminds us of. A photograph in a frame isn't special because of the paper. It's special because of the story it tells. Material things are temporary, but the emotions, the laughter, and the love attached to them are what last. Imagine this: a child won't remember exactly what toy you bought them when they were young, but they'll never forget the time you sat on the floor and played with them. A friend might not recall the expensive restaurant you once treated them to, but they'll hold close the memory of the deep conversation you had at the table. In the end, it's not the price tag on the object that makes it valuable. It's the connection, the bond, and the experience it represents. I once heard about a man who, at 70, began giving away most of his belongings. When his children asked why, he smiled and said, "Because I don't want you to remember me for my stuff. I want you to remember me for the time I spent with you." That's wisdom we often overlook. We spend the first half of our lives chasing things, believing they'll bring happiness, only to discover later that the most meaningful moments had nothing to do with the things at all. When we recognize that memories are greater than material things, we start living differently. We become less focused on buying more and more focused on creating experiences worth holding on to. Instead of asking, "What can I get?" we begin asking, "What can I share? What moments can I create today that will be remembered tomorrow?" That shift in mindset changes everything. It changes how we spend our time, how we invest our energy, and how we connect with people around us. And here's the best part. Memories don't require wealth or luxury. They don't depend on having the biggest house or the fanciest car. Some of the most beautiful memories come from the simplest things: sharing a meal, watching a sunset, listening to someone's story, or simply being present in a quiet moment together. Those are the treasures that outlive us. So as the years pass and we grow older, the question to ask ourselves isn't, "What things do I still need?" but rather, "What moments do I still want to create?" Because no matter how shiny or expensive material things fade, break, or are forgotten, but memories, they travel with us, they live in others long after we're gone, and they remind us that life's greatest wealth is not what we owned but how we lived, and how deeply we loved. Clutter isn't just about having too many things in your home. It's about the hidden weight those things place on your mind and spirit. Walk into a room overflowing with boxes, clothes, and items you haven't touched in years, and notice how your energy shifts. It's almost as if the walls close in a little, as if the very air feels heavier. That's because clutter is not only physical, it's emotional. Every item we keep carries a little piece of responsibility with it. And when you've spent decades collecting, those pieces start to pile up into something overwhelming. Think about a drawer in your home you haven't opened in months. Maybe it's filled with old keys, receipts, gadgets that don't even work anymore. Each time you glance at it, even if just for a second, your mind whispers, "I should deal with that." That small whisper may seem insignificant, but multiply it by every closet, every cupboard, every corner filled with unused items, and suddenly your mind is juggling 1,000 tiny whispers of unfinished business. That's why clutter steals your peace. It constantly reminds you of what's undone, of what needs attention, of what you're holding on to but no longer need. I once heard about a woman in her 60s who finally decided to clear out her basement. For years, it had been filled with boxes from when her kids were younger, old furniture, and things she thought she might need someday. It took her weeks to sort through it all, but when she finally finished, she said something powerful. "I feel like I've taken bricks off my chest." That's exactly what clutter does. It weighs us down without us even realizing it. We think it's just sitting quietly in the corner, but in reality it's pressing on us, taking up mental space that could be filled with peace, creativity, or joy. And here's the thing, clutter doesn't just drain you, it can hold you hostage. You might find yourself avoiding certain rooms in your home because they feel overwhelming. Or maybe you put off inviting friends and family over because the thought of cleaning up feels too big to handle. In those ways, clutter doesn't just fill your house, it steals opportunities, moments of connection, and chances to live freely. But when you begin letting go, everything changes. Suddenly, walking into your space feels lighter. You breathe easier. You don't spend half an hour searching for one item because it's buried under piles of things you don't use. The freedom is almost immediate. You create space not just in your home but in your heart. You create an environment where peace can finally take the place of pressure. The truth is, we hold onto things because we believe they'll give us comfort or security. But real comfort doesn't come from a closet stuffed with clothes you'll never wear. Real security doesn't come from boxes of things you'll never use. Real comfort and security come from simplicity, clarity, and knowing that your environment supports your life instead of overwhelming it. And let's be honest, after 60, we don't need more things. What we need is more peace, more space, more freedom to enjoy the years ahead without the burden of managing a house full of stuff. Decluttering isn't about loss, it's about gain. You gain clarity, you gain room to breathe, you gain the ability to focus on what truly matters. Your relationships, your passions, your health, your joy. So, the next time you walk into a cluttered space and feel that weight pressing down on you, remind yourself that you have the power to release it. Every item you let go of is a piece of peace you reclaim. And in that peace, you'll find more energy, more freedom, and a deeper sense of happiness than any material thing could ever give. When you think about the people you love most, what comes to mind first? It's probably their smile, their voice, the way they made you feel safe, or the moments you laughed together. What almost never comes to mind is the car they drove, the size of their house, or the brand of clothes they wore. That's because at the heart of every human connection, it's not possessions that matter, it's presence. People don't value you for what you own. They value you for who you are. Imagine your grandchildren running into your home. They don't race to hug the television or the china cabinet. They race to hug you. They want to hear your stories, they want your attention, and they want the kind of love only you can give. All the furniture, jewelry, and gadgets in the world can't replace the warmth of your embrace or the joy of your laughter. Yet too often, we fall into the trap of thinking that things define us. We hold onto possessions believing they give us status, respect, or even love. But the truth is, love isn't found in the walls of your home. It's found in the moments shared within those walls. A big house filled with silence is emptier than a small room filled with laughter. Think back to someone who influenced your life deeply, a teacher, a friend, a parent, or a mentor. Do you remember what kind of shoes they wore or the furniture in their living room? Probably not. What you remember is how they treated you, the lessons they taught you, the encouragement they gave you when you needed it most. That's proof that people value people, not possessions. I once heard a story about a man who spent most of his life working long hours, constantly buying newer cars, fancier clothes, and bigger houses. He thought his family would be proud of all he had built. But in his later years, he realized that what his children remembered most wasn't the car in the driveway, it was the rare moments when he actually sat with them, listened to them, and showed up for their school plays. His possessions were impressive, but his presence was priceless. That realization can be a turning point for all of us, especially as we get older. After 60, people aren't looking to you for things. They're looking to you for wisdom, for comfort, for the reassurance that they matter. They want your stories about resilience, your laughter that lightens the room, your love that makes them feel seen. Your true value has nothing to do with what you can hand down in a box, and everything to do with what you pour into people's hearts. And here's the freedom in that truth. You don't need to chase material things to matter. You don't need to prove your worth through possessions. You already have within you the greatest gift anyone could ask for yourself. Your time, your attention, your kindness, your love. Those are the things that no one can buy and no one can replace. So as you look at the things you've gathered over a lifetime, remember this. They might sit on shelves, but they don't hold the real treasure. The treasure is you, and the more you give of yourself, the more love, wisdom, and presence you share, the richer the people around you become. At the end of the day, when people think of you, they won't recall the things you owned. They'll remember the way you made them feel, and that is worth more than any possession in the world. When we hear the word legacy, most people immediately think of money, property, or valuables passed down to the next generation. And while inheritance can certainly be helpful, let's be honest, material wealth fades quickly. Money gets spent, homes get sold, possessions get divided and eventually forgotten. But what never fades is the impact you've made on people's lives. That's the true legacy, and it carries far more weight than any material inheritance ever could. Think about it. The lessons you teach your children and grandchildren will live on in them, and in the people they touch, long after material things are gone. The way you treated others, whether with kindness, patience, or generosity, becomes a model they carry into their own relationships. Your resilience in hard times, your laughter in good times, your ability to keep going no matter what. That's the kind of wealth no one can measure, yet it's priceless. I remember a story about a man who passed away in his late 70s. He wasn't wealthy by traditional standards. He didn't leave behind a fortune, but at his funeral, the room was overflowing. People stood and spoke for hours about how he always made time to listen, how he offered advice when they felt lost, how he helped neighbors without ever expecting anything in return. That was his legacy, not money, but a ripple of kindness that touched hundreds of lives. Isn't that what we all want? To be remembered not for what we owned, but for the difference we made. Now compare that with another story, a family who inherited a large estate from their father. At first, it felt like a blessing. But within months, arguments broke out. Siblings stopped speaking to each other over who got what. Eventually, most of the possessions were sold and the money was divided and spent. The inheritance caused division instead of unity. The truth is, the man's wealth didn't hold his family together. In some ways, it pulled them apart. The inheritance lasted only a short time, but the absence of deeper values left an emptiness that no amount of money could fill. That's why impact matters more than inheritance. When you choose to live in a way that uplifts others, you're planting seeds that will continue to grow long after you're gone. Teaching a grandchild to be compassionate, showing a friend the importance of perseverance, or modeling kindness in everyday life. Those are the things people will carry forward. Your words, your actions, and your example create ripples that can travel through generations. The beauty of this truth is that it's never too late to build that kind of legacy. You don't need millions of dollars in the bank to leave behind something meaningful. You already have everything you need inside of you. Every conversation, every choice, every act of kindness adds to the story of your life and how people will remember you. And after 60, you're in the perfect position to be intentional about it, to decide what values you want to pass on, what wisdom you want to share, and what kind of impact you want to make. So, as you think about the future, ask yourself, when people speak about me years from now, what do I want them to say? Do I want them to talk about the car I drove, or do I want them to remember the way I made them feel loved and supported? Do I want them to fight over my possessions, or do I want them to smile at the thought of the life lessons I left behind? Legacy isn't built on what you leave in a will. Legacy is built on what you leave in people's hearts. And when you focus on that kind of impact, you'll leave behind something so much greater than inheritance. You'll leave behind a piece of yourself that lives forever. One of the most liberating truths you can embrace after 60 is this: freedom doesn't come from holding on, it comes from letting go. For much of our lives, we're taught to collect, to save, to keep. We store clothes for someday, hold onto furniture because it was expensive, and stack boxes of things we no longer use but can't quite release. The idea of letting go feels like losing something, but here's the surprising reality: letting go isn't loss at all, it's gaining your life back. Think about the times you've finally cleaned out a drawer or given away a pile of things you no longer needed. Didn't you feel lighter? Almost as if a burden you didn't realize you were carrying had been lifted. That's because every item you hold onto comes with invisible strings: responsibility, maintenance, space, and sometimes guilt. Those strings can tie you down, keeping you from living freely. The act of letting go is like cutting those strings one by one until you're finally able to move without that weight pulling at you. I once heard about a man who, in his 70s, decided to downsize his home. At first, it felt overwhelming. Decades of stuff filled his attic, garage, and closets. But as he let go piece by piece, something remarkable happened. He said, "I thought I'd be sad, but instead I feel free. My home is lighter, and so am I." What he discovered is something we all eventually learn. Our things don't own us unless we let them. When we release them, we create space, not just in our homes, but in our minds and hearts. Letting go doesn't just apply to physical possessions. It also means releasing old regrets, grudges, and the constant need to hold on to control. Think about how much mental space regret can take up. The what-ifs and if-onlys, or the bitterness of holding on to something someone said or did years ago. These, too, are forms of clutter, and they weigh us down far more heavily than objects ever could. When you decide to let go of those, you give yourself the freedom to live in the present, to embrace joy without the shadow of the past. And here's the most empowering part: letting go creates room for what really matters. When your home isn't filled with boxes of things you don't need, you suddenly have space for family gatherings, laughter, and peace. When your mind isn't filled with regrets or grudges, you suddenly have energy for creativity, connection, and love. By holding on, you think you're preserving life, but by letting go, you're actually making more of it possible. Some people fear that letting go means forgetting, but that's not true. You don't lose the memories when you give away the object. You don't lose the lessons when you release the regret. What you lose is the heaviness that kept you from moving forward. Freedom comes when you stop gripping so tightly to things you can't take with you and start focusing on what you can carry: your love, your joy, your wisdom, your presence. So if you've reached a stage in life where you feel weighed down by too much, whether it's stuff in your home or emotions in your heart, remember this: you have the power to choose freedom. Every drawer you clear, every regret you release, every burden you set down is a step toward living lighter. And in that lightness, you'll find something priceless: the freedom to spend the years ahead not tied to the past, but fully alive in the present. Because real freedom isn't about owning everything. It's about needing nothing but what truly matters. And once you let go, you'll see that the best part of life isn't in what you've kept, but in the space you've created to finally live. Thank you.